which considers a proposal by Women Occupy San Diego to change Charter Section 43D, the Citizens Review Board on Police Practices. Kate Yavendetti is presenting. How much time would you like for your presentation, ma'am?
I think I have it down to 10 minutes or less.
Okay, 10 minutes or less sounds perfect.
That's what I'm working on.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Good morning, Councilmember Leitner and all the council members on this committee. You've heard from us a number of times before, and we appreciate you listening to us again. I am representing Women Occupy San Diego, and I also represent the National Lawyers Guild and our 27 endorsing organizations who support the proposal that we have presented to you for reform of the Citizens Review Board. The initial proposal that we presented, as you know, was quite lengthy, and then we went through a number of meetings with Charter Review, with Public Safety and Livable Neighborhoods, and subsequently Charter Review, after a robust discussion that we really appreciated, came up with a few recommended changes to the charter, 3 what we consider very minor changes. We appreciate your taking our recommendation to change the name from Citizens Review Board to Community Review Board. We appreciate your adding to the charter that there would be review of all police shootings and in-custody deaths, which of course is already happening, but now it's going to be in the, you have recommended it that it be in the charter, and that oversight include all of the council members as well as the mayor. But in our view, of course, those are minor, and that's not really the major points that we were asking for. We think that's really inadequate and does not provide the community with a sense that the city council really understands what the community wants and needs in the way of police accountability. We have revised our proposal that you have in front of you, and we have taken the charter review proposal, that what came out of charter review, and we've added the 3 points that are essential: independent investigators, independent legal counsel, and subpoena power. We acknowledge all the work that's been done by the council, and all the times that we've talked with you separately and your staff. We also appreciate all the work that's been done by the new executive director, Charmaine Mosley, of the Citizens Review Board. She's done a lot of work since she's been here, and we appreciate that. She's taken actually a lot of our suggestions, and we know that they're working on them and have adopted some of those things. We have a lot more suggestions, and we hope that we can continue to work with her on those suggestions. But again, it's still not enough. We do note that we were very appreciative that there was an annual report that came out in 2015, and the statistics were very interesting to us, although there's still some of the back reports that still need to be done. But again, the statistics even were inadequate, and we would speak to that at some point. What jumped out to us in the 2015 report is that out of all of the cases that were reviewed in 2015, all of the recommendations that came to the CRB from, of course, the police department, from internal affairs, all of them were adopted, six with minor changes, but they were all adopted. And in our view, that doesn't pass the smell test. That's why we think we need independent investigators. Why? Why is that essential? The police should not be in charge of reviewing their own misconduct. They can do their own internal review, but the community process is very different, and the community demands independence. Based on my own personal experience, when we filed a complaint and 2 armed police officers came to my home to speak to me and my husband about our complaint, and the very first thing they said to us is, you know, you can be charged civilly and criminally for making a false police complaint. Now, we are clearly white, professional, middle-class people, but I can certainly imagine how many complainants and potential witnesses could be intimidated and put off by that sort of presentation by really non-independent investigators. We are told by current and former CRB members that Internal Affairs does a good job, but I've also been told by CRB members that it really depends on who's in Internal Affairs, how much they want to do, and how much work they want to do. And the CRB members do a lot of work, all volunteer members. They have to go to the police department and review these files, and it's a lot of work. But the reality is they don't know if they're getting everything. They don't know what else to ask for. They are relying on the police department to provide them with what they're asked for. We in the legal field know that even an appearance of conflict is the same as a conflict, and we have to recuse ourselves whenever there's an appearance of conflict in any way. Judges do, lawyers do, that's the way it is. The community feels that there is a conflict, not just an appearance of conflict, but an actual conflict. We've been told one of the objections to this is that the police department won't work with independent investigators. Now, the county has had independent investigators ever since the CLRB has been operative. And it took them a while, but they worked out an agreement with law enforcement so that their investigators have access to records. They have subpoena power. They've never had to use subpoena power because they've worked out that agreement. We believe that the police department wants the same thing that we do, wants the same thing the community does, and wants the same thing that you do. And that is thorough, transparent, complete investigations of police misconduct so that everybody can trust what's going on. It's also been raised as sort of a dichotomy between a review and an investigative model, and that we have a review model and not an investigative model. That's really a false dichotomy. These are both investigative models. It's just who does the investigation, whether it's done by an independent investigator or whether it's done by law enforcement. The community trust leads to cooperation and officer safety. We can't emphasize that more. On the issue of independent legal counsel, again, we think that's essential for all case-related matters. The city attorney has experience in Brown Act issues, public meetings issues, those sorts of things, and they would continue to provide that information. But again, we have to avoid the appearance of conflict. Where's the conflict? The city attorney's interest is in protecting the city against liability. The city attorney doesn't want, I assume as an attorney, doesn't want the CRB to substantiate complaints because there's possible liability that comes out of that. That is such a blatant conflict that almost all of the candidates who ran for city council support our proposal for independent legal counsel. People involved with ethics, the Ethics Commission, Gil Cabrera, who was part of the Ethics Commission and a candidate for city council, supported it. And people in the legal community who are involved with legal ethics say, yes, this is a clear conflict. And we think that that's really obvious. The grand jury also came out with a recommendation just recently about independent legal counsel. And we have also heard members of the council here talk about independent legal counsel and support that. We've heard some support for independent investigators, maybe putting money in the budget for that. We've heard that from several council members, but we haven't seen it in the proposal. The Ethics Commission in the city of San Diego has independent legal counsel, has independent investigators for exactly the same reason, to avoid conflict of interest. Now is the time for the city council to be forward-looking. I just heard a city council member talk about moving forward and being a bright star. That wasn't your words, but on the issue of climate change and the whole issue of that was just talked about in the prior item. This is now the time. We are now post-Ferguson. We don't want to see Ferguson or Baltimore or any of those other problems occurring in San Diego. Nationally and locally, people are calling for true police accountability, transparency in what's going on, and a truly independent review of police conduct. There's really no downside here, as far as we can see. There has been no open opposition. What we have heard in some of the meetings is, well, it's good enough. It's working well. We have a new executive director. She's doing a good job. CRB members say it's working well. And I understand that the insiders in the process feel that it's working well, but the community doesn't. And that's one of the most important things that this city council has to look at. As I said, we don't, people who are working the system may or may not know how much information they're really getting, and may not want to buck the relationship, the good relationship that they now have with the police department. This committee right now has the opportunity to do the right thing and to put our modified proposal from the charter review, what we have added, to put that on the ballot for November 2016, and we sincerely hope that you will do that. Thank you.
We have additional before we move to public speakers, any comments from the IBA, Mayor's Office, City Attorney's Office, Mayor's Office?
Thank you, Council President. I just wanted to provide you an update on the motion that was passed at Charter Review. I believe it was in the March hearing. There were 4 elements that were involved in that. I wanted to give you an update, specifically as it related to the recommendation for the Mayor's Office to extend terms from 1 year to 2 years. That item is going to be heard, as I understand it, by the CRB in open session on June 28th. So there's movement on this and all of the recommendations, as well as the second one to develop a process for the board where they can audit Category 2 complaints. That's also going to be heard by the committee, and then about independent counsel, that's going to be discussed. Lastly, I'd just like to remind the members of the committee that as it relates to additional staff resources, there was 1 full-time FTE that was added to the FY17 budget that was passed earlier this week. That's going to be placed with the Neighborhood Services branch specifically for this purpose.
And was there not an authorization approved in the budget for independent counsel as well?
That's correct.
Okay. Clerk, have any comment? We will now move to public testimony. Given the number, we are limiting testimony to 2 minutes per person.
Thank you. All of the speakers are in favor, beginning with Christina Imhoff, followed by John Stump, followed by Francine Maxwell.
Hi, my name is Christina Imhoff. This proposal is not controversial. It is based on common sense and basic principles of fairness and transparency. The County Law Enforcement Review Board already has been functioning under the terms of this proposal for over 20 years with no problems. And as Ms. Yavandetti said, they had reached an agreement on the issues of that you might be concerned about. It doesn't seem to be a big deal in the county. Your own City Ethics Commission operates on the same terms as we proposed, and that was adopted without difficulty. Why should the city's Oversight Board of Law Enforcement be any different? Why should it be treated on a different basis? It's obvious to the citizens, to the community, that there is no transparency, and yet, you know, this path that you're taking of limiting the oversight board's independence is not really clear to anybody. Why? Why should there be less power and authority in the Citizens Oversight Board than in the county or in your own Ethics Commission? Why would it be just and fair for our community? I really don't understand what the problems are. Rather than hand over this decision to people in the Police Officers Association, you have the power to decide this issue once and for all, and you have the unique opportunity to actually serve the community, your constituents, and provide us with the oversight powers
Thank you, ma'am.
we deserve. Please bring it up on the ballot. Thank you.
Thank you, John Stump, followed by Francine Maxwell, followed by Reverend Shane Harris.
Hello, John Stump. I was somewhat disappointed that the council didn't deem to at least refer the Women's Democratic Club issue to committee hearing at least. This one, at least, should continue to be heard. There's growing dissatisfaction between the relationship. People are feeling that they're not being heard, and they're not getting proper oversight. You know, anger will increase, and eventually someone will come up with a ballot proposition so that, as Mr. Kersey says, we follow the lead of major cities and have an elected police commissioner. So please don't just note and file. Please continue this discussion and refer it to committee.
Thank you. Francine Maxwell, followed by Reverend Shane Harris, followed by Martha Sullivan.
Francine Maxwell, Police Commissioner. Ooh, I didn't hear that piece. I'm excited to hear what the mayor's report was about things going forward, but I also would like the conversation, actions speak to priorities, and the constituents in our city, we want to see more action. So I would like you to consider a forensic investigator being awarded to this. I like that there was an FTE added because there needs to be a budgeted staff. They still need a budget there. I think that members of the CRB, we need to have a conversation in reference to a stipend, not only because of their time, but the mileage that it takes for them to get back and forth. I think that that would be very important. And, you know, I know that they're going through cultural training on cultural competency. I think that that's very important. We need to make sure and show proof, and we need to look at who's giving that cultural competency training. And then I also want to make sure that there's a conversation that has to be had about a report. Although I'm excited that there was a 2015 annual report, I like to see you have the conversation that every 6 months you're feeling the pulse of what the CRB is doing. You want to see what is going on, how many complaints were filed. I think that access to the computer where people can file their complaint is wonderful, but some people don't have computer access, so it's still very hard for them. I know that we're trying to make people comfortable to let them know that you don't have to complain in your area that you live in, that you work in. You can go to another police station and you can file a complaint. So I like to see us do just a little bit more publicity about that, because a lot of youth will never stay and go to their subdivision where they feel like they were treated, you know, when they're trying to just walk back and forth to school or catch the trolley to the mall. So I like for us to like maybe do just some type of splash, some type of campaign to let everybody know, if you live somewhere else, go somewhere else, but make sure that you say something so that when people see something, they know to say something. Thank you.
Thank you. Reverend Shane Harris, followed by Martha Sullivan.
Actually, I'm not Reverend Shane Harris, but he had to leave, but he wrote out a statement that he asked me to read, if that's okay.
We'll need a speaker slip from you as well, ma'am.
Pardon? Oh. You mean I need to?
Go right ahead.
Okay,
Go right
thank
ahead.
you. This is a statement from Reverend Shane Harris, who is working with us. He's with the National Action Network, San Diego. It is very important to me and the National Action Network that we give the public the opportunity to sort out the current pros and cons in November on the ballot. We are calling for a real community-driven review board that reflects the several backgrounds, age groups, and racial diversities within the community. Starting today, please give the voters an opportunity in November concerning this charter review. We are asking the committee to make the right choice today and pass this through to the November ballot. Thank you.
Thank you. Martha Sullivan.
Good morning, Council. As you know, Women Occupy has been working on this for about 3 years. It means a lot to us. And frankly, I have no comprehension why the Ethics Commission, which was founded in 2001 by ordinance, it's okay for them to have independent investigators, independent legal counsel, and subpoena powers to investigate elected officials of this city and employees of this city and candidates to run for office in this city. But it's not acceptable to adopt the same framework for our police officers who have such a huge, huge impact on the lives of people who live in San Diego. They have a tremendous power, they have a tremendous responsibility, and they certainly can withstand the same scrutiny as the elected officials and employees of the same city government. So it absolutely, I have no understanding why this city council refuses to put this before the voters of San Diego. So we're taking this one last opportunity before this Rules Committee to provide a simplified charter amendment to provide at least a minimum. We call upon you to do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you. In addition, there are at least 10 speaker slips in favor with no need to speak that will be kept on file in my office should individuals wish to view them. Otherwise, that concludes the public testimony on this item.
I appreciate the presentation and the public testimony this morning. The Public Safety and Livable Neighborhoods Charter Review and Rules Committees have already forwarded a proposal to the full City Council that will be considered on June 28th. I understand and can appreciate your continued advocacy for more reforms than those we have already approved and recommended, but I would rather push forward with the reforms we've approved than wait until there is consensus on any additional changes and run the risk of not doing anything. With that, Council President Pro Tem Emerald.
Thank you very much for your persistence on this. I think that we're trying to get where you are trying to go, including this week when we approved the budget, $25,000 to have independent counsel. And I think that was the same amount of money that the county spends in a year to bring in an independent counsel to offer legal advice. So we would be on par with the county there. I know that some of the proposals that were made would require that we kind of reconfigure the Citizens Review Board, and that's going to take a lot of time. But the Public Safety Livable Neighborhoods Committee did forward a recommendation on to full council, and again, that's going to be heard on June 28th. And I just want to remind you of the specifics that were in it. It was a motion of Mr. Gloria to amend the city charter, section 43D, to rename the Citizens Review Board to the Community Review Board, and this was at the request of Women Occupy. Replace references to city manager with mayor and city council, which comports with our new form of government, the mayor strong council form of government. Require that the review board review all cases involving in-custody deaths and officer-related shootings and replace references to citizen with community member. And again, these are in conformance with what was requested from Women Occupy. And then the second item, to recommend the mayor's office extend the terms of members from 1 year to 2, as Mr. Monroy had mentioned. Develop a process by which Citizens Review Board members can audit Category 2 complaints and pull specific cases for review, and include funding for an independent counsel to provide additional advisory capacity to the board, and recommend the city attorney retain that outside counsel for this purpose. And that's keeping with our ordinance here that the city attorney oversees legal contracts. So, and it was seconded by Ms. Cole. It passed the Public Safety Committee to be referred directly to council. So June 28th here at council, the full council will take a look at these recommendations that were made by the committee. I know it doesn't go far enough for some people, but it is a start. And we do have new leadership at the advisory board, and the city is aggressively seeking people who would want to serve on the board. And I encourage people from all walks of life and all communities to take an interest. I know it's a lot of work, but if we care about diversity and having communities represented on this board, then volunteers really do need to step up. And we've got a number of them here today. I want to thank you for your service. I know how hard you work. I know you take this job seriously, and you want to create a level playing field for all people in our community. So thank you for everything you do. And we'll look forward to bringing this to full council and having a vote to put it on the ballot. And just so you know, I support taking this to the November ballot. I hope that the voters will recognize the importance of it and support this step forward for the city and the relationship between the community and our police department. Thanks.
I'd like to clarify for the record that that did go from PSNLN to the Charter Review Committee, which then forwarded it to council. It will be at council on June 28th for placement on the November ballot.